Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're continuing our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam with no regrets for the time we've spent here in the Dham. We'll do it again, too, even without being asked. This is from the third canto, 29th chapter, Explanation of Devotional Service. And we're up to text number 17. Wow. The Outside People's Party. You guys better do a campaign or something. Okay, 17. The pure devotee should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect. Wait, I'll start in just a second. There's strum and drung. After the strum and drung. 3:29:17. The pure devotee should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect to the spiritual master and the acharyas. He should be compassionate to the poor and make friendship with persons who are his equals. But all his activities should be executed under regulation and with control of the senses. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter, it is clearly stated that one should execute devotional service and advance on the path of spiritual knowledge by accepting the acharya. Acharyopasanam. One should worship an acharya, a spiritual master who knows things as they are. A spiritual master must be in the disciplic succession from Krishna. The predecessors of the spiritual master are his spiritual master, his grand spiritual master, his great-grand spiritual master, and so on, who form the disciplic succession of acharyas. It is recommended herewith that all the acharyas be given the highest respect. It is stated, Gurushu Naramati. Gurushu means unto the acharyas, and Naramati means thinking like a common man. To think of the Vaishnavas, the devotees, as belonging to a particular caste or community, to think of the acharyas as ordinary men, or to think of the deity in the temple as being made of stone, wood, or metal is condemned. Niyamena, one should offer the greatest respect to the acharyas according to the standard regulations. A devotee should also be compassionate to the poor. This does not refer to those who are poverty-stricken materially. According to devotional vision, a man is poor if he is not in Krishna consciousness. A man may be very rich materially, but if he is not Krishna conscious, he is considered poor. On the other hand, many acharyas such as Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami used to live beneath trees every night. Superficially, it appeared that they were very poverty-stricken, but from their writings we can understand that in spiritual life they were the richest personalities. A devotee shows compassion to those poor souls who are wanting in spiritual knowledge by enlightening them in order to elevate them to Krishna consciousness. That is one of the duties of a devotee. He should also make friendship with persons who are on an equal level with himself, or who have the same understanding that he does. For a devotee, there is no point in making friendships with ordinary persons. He should make friendships with other devotees, so that by discussing among themselves, they may elevate one another on the path of spiritual understanding. This is called Ishtagoshti. In Bhagavad Gita, there is a reference to Bodhyanta Parasparam, discussing among themselves. Generally, pure devotees utilize their valuable time in chanting and discussing various activities of Lord Krishna or Lord Chaitanya amongst themselves. There are innumerable books, such as the Puranas, Mahabharata, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and Upanishads, which contain countless subjects for discussion among two devotees or more. Friendship should be cemented between persons with mutual interest and understanding. Such persons are said to be swajati, of the same caste. The devotee should avoid a person whose character is not fixed in the standard understanding. Even though he may be a Vaishnav or a devotee of Krishna, if his character is not correctly representative, then he should be avoided. One should steadily control the senses and the mind and strictly follow the rules and regulations, and he should make friendship with persons of the same standard. Text 18. A devotee should always try to hear about spiritual matters and should always utilize his time in chanting the holy name of the Lord. His behavior should always be straightforward and simple. And although he is not envious but friendly to everyone, he should avoid the company of persons who are not spiritually advanced. In order to advance in spiritual understanding, one has to hear from authentic sources about spiritual knowledge. One can understand the reality of spiritual life by following strict regulative principles and by controlling the senses. To have control, it is necessary that one be nonviolent and truthful, refrain from stealing, abstain from sex life, and possess only that which is absolutely necessary for keeping the body and soul together. One should not eat more than necessary. He should not collect more paraphernalia than necessary. He should not talk unnecessarily with common men, and he should not follow the rules and regulations without purpose. He should follow the rules and regulations so that he may actually make advancement. There are 18 qualifications mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, among which is simplicity. One should be without pride. One should not demand unnecessary respect from others. And one should be nonviolent. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa. One should be very tolerant and simple. And one should accept the spiritual master, and one should control the senses. These are mentioned here and in Bhagavad Gita as well. One should hear from authentic sources how to advance in spiritual life. Such instructions should be taken from the Acharya and should be assimilated. It is especially mentioned here, Nam Sankirtanachcha. One should chant the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Either individually or with others. Lord Chaitanya has given special stress to chanting of these holy names of the Lord as the basic principle of spiritual advancement. Another word used here is arjavena, meaning without duplicity, without diplomacy. A devotee should not make plans out of self-interest. Of course, preachers sometimes have to make some plan to execute the mission of the Lord under proper guidance. But regarding personal self-interest, a devotee should always be without diplomacy, and he should avoid the company of persons who are not advancing in spiritual life. Another word is Arya. Aryans are people who are advancing in knowledge of Krishna consciousness as well as in material prosperity. The difference between the Aryan and the non-Aryan, the Sura and the Asura, is in their standards of spiritual advancement. Association with persons who are not spiritually advanced is forbidden. Lord Chaitanya advised, asatsanga tyag. One should avoid persons who are attached to the temporary. Asat is one who is too materially attached, who is not a devotee of the Lord, and who is too attached to women or enjoyable material things. Such a person, according to Vaishnava philosophy, is persona non grata. A devotee should not be proud of his acquisitions. The symptoms of a devotee are meekness and humility. Although spiritually very advanced, he will always remain meek and humble, as Kaviraj Goswami and all other Vaishnavas have taught us by personal example. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught that one should be humbler than the grass on the street and more tolerant than a tree. One should not be proud of or falsely puffed up. In this way, one will surely advance in spiritual life. 19. When one is fully qualified with all these transcendental attributes, and his consciousness is thus completely purified, he is immediately attracted simply by hearing my name or hearing of my transcendental quality. Purport. In the beginning of this instruction, the Lord explained to his mother that madguna shruti matrena, simply by hearing of the name, quality, form, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is immediately attracted. A person becomes fully qualified with all transcendental qualities by following the rules and regulations as recommended in different scriptures. We have developed certain unnecessary qualities by material association, and by following the above process, we become free from that contamination. To develop transcendental qualities, as explained in the previous verse, one must become freed from these contaminated qualities. As the chariot of air carries an aroma from its source and immediately catches the sense of smell, similarly, one who constantly engages in devotional service and Krishna consciousness can catch the Supreme Soul, who is equally present everywhere. I'll read it again. As the chariot of air catches an aroma from its source and immediately catches the sense of smell, similarly, one who constantly engages in devotional service and Krishna consciousness can catch the Supreme Soul, who is equally present everywhere. I don't know about out there, but the devotees in here are enjoying the verse. Maybe too much. Purport. As a breeze carrying a pleasant fragrance from a garden of flowers at once captures the organ of smell, so one's consciousness, saturated with devotion, can at once capture the transcendental existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who, in his Paramatma feature, is present everywhere, even in the heart of every living being. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Kshetrajna, present within this body, but he is also simultaneously present in every other body. Since the individual soul is present only in a particular body, he is altered when another individual soul does not cooperate with him. I'll read that again. Since the individual soul is present only in a particular body, he is altered when another individual soul does not cooperate with him. The Supersoul, however, is equally present everywhere. Individual souls may disagree, but the Supersoul, being equally present in every body, is called unchanging or avikari. The individual soul, when fully saturated with Krishna consciousness, can understand the presence of the Supersoul. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktimam Abhijanati. A person saturated with devotional service in full Krishna consciousness can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead either as Supersoul or as the Supreme Person. 21. I am present in every entity as the Supersoul. If someone neglects or disregards that Supersoul everywhere and engages himself in worship of the deity in the temple, that is simply imitation. Purport. In purified consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one sees the presence of Krishna everywhere. If therefore one only engages in deity worship in the temple and does not consider other living entities, then he is in the lowest grade of devotional service. One who worships the deity in the temple and does not show respect to others is a devotee on the material platform in the lowest stage of devotional service. A devotee should try to understand everything in relationship with Krishna and try to serve everything in that spirit. To serve everything means to engage everything in the service of Krishna. If a person is innocent and does not know his relationship with Krishna, an advanced devotee should try to engage him in the service of Krishna. One who is advanced in Krishna consciousness can engage not only the living being, but everything in the service of Krishna. Text 22. One who worships the deity of Godhead in the temples, but does not know that the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is situated in every living entity's heart, must be in ignorance, and is compared to one who offers oblations into ashes. Purport. It is stated clearly herein that the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his plenary expansion of Supersoul is present in all living entities. The living entities have 8,400,000 different kinds of bodies, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is living in every body, both as the individual soul and as the Supersoul. Since the individual soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, in that sense, the Lord is living in every body. And as Supersoul, the Lord is also present as a witness. In both cases, the presence of God in every living entity is essential. Therefore, persons who profess to belong to some religious sect, but who do not feel the presence of the Supreme Personality of God in every living entity and everywhere else, are in the mode of ignorance. If without this preliminary knowledge of the Lord's omnipresence, one simply attaches himself to the rituals in a temple, church, or mosque, it is as if he were offering butter into ashes rather than into the fire. One offers sacrifices by pouring clarified butter into a fire and by chanting Vedic mantras. But even if there are Vedic mantras and all conditions are favorable, if the clarified butter is poured on ashes, then the sacrifice will be useless. In other words, a devotee should not ignore any living entity. The devotee must know that in every living entity, however significant he may be, the devotee must know that in every living entity, however insignificant he may be, even in an ant, God is present, and therefore every living entity should be kindly treated and should not be subjected to any violence. In modern civilized society, slaughterhouses are regularly maintained and supported by a certain type of religious principle. But without knowledge of the presence of God in every living entity, any so-called advancement of human civilization, either spiritual or material, is to be understood as being in the mode of ignorance. 23. One who offers me respect but is envious of the bodies of others and is therefore a separatist never attains peace of mind because of his inimical behavior towards other living entities. Purport. In this verse, two phrases, bhuteshu bada vairasya, inimical towards others, and dvishata para kayi, envious of another's body, are significant. One who is envious of or inimical towards others never experiences any happiness. A devotee's vision, therefore, must be perfect. He should ignore bodily distinctions and should see only the presence of the part and parcel of the Supreme and the Lord himself in his plenary expansion as Supersoul. That is the vision of a pure devotee. The bodily expression of a particular type of living entity is always ignored by the devotee. It is expressed herein that the Lord is always eager to deliver the conditioned souls who have been encaged within material bodies. Devotees are expected to carry the message or desire of the Lord to such conditioned souls and enlighten them with Krishna consciousness. Thus they may be elevated to transcendental spiritual life, and the mission of their lives will be successful. Of course, this is not possible for living entities who are lower than human beings, but in human society it is feasible that all living entities can be enlightened with Krishna consciousness. Even living entities who are lower than human can be raised to Krishna consciousness by other methods. For example, Shivananda Sain, a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, delivered a dog by feeding him prasad. Distribution of prasad, or remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, even to the ignorant masses of people and to animals, gives such living entities the chance for elevation to Krishna consciousness. Factually, it happened when the same dog, when met by Lord Chaitanya at Puri, was liberated from the material condition. It is especially mentioned here that a devotee must be free from all violence, jiva himsa, Lord Chaitanya has recommended that a devotee not commit violence to any living entity. Sometimes the question is raised that since vegetables also have life and devotees take vegetable foodstuffs, isn't that violence? Firstly, however, taking some leaves, twigs, or fruit from a tree or plant does not kill the plant. Besides that, Jivahimsa means that since every living entity has to pass through a particular type of body according to his past karma, although every living entity is eternal, he should not be disturbed in his gradual evolution. A devotee has to execute the principles of devotional service exactly as they are. And he must know that however significant a living entity may be, a devotee has to execute the principles of devotional service exactly as they are. And he must know that however insignificant a living entity may be, the Lord is present within him. The devotee must realize this universal presence of the Lord. We'll take 4 quick comments or questions. Yes?
I was just reflecting on the topic of envy, and when you were this last sentence, you're saying how a devotee has to execute the principles of devotional service exactly as they are. And you must know that, however, and you said significant at first, and I was just thinking also that's such a good reminder for me that there's also living entities who are also extremely significant and making a big impact, and that envy also clouds that vision that Krishna is also within their heart and they're also very dear to Krishna. And I don't know, it's just a helpful reminder to me that no matter how significant or insignificant, Krishna is guiding and has love for every single living entity, and we should always remember that.
You have the Toronto Temple in Canada, which is in one of the most affluent in the world. Jagadish, who was the GBC there many years ago, used to go door to door to those huge mansions because he felt sorry for the rich people. Okay, 3 more and we're out. Yes. Patito Pavana.
Similarly, just in this last purport, that we must realize, but basically we have to see that every living entity is very dear to the Lord, and the Lord's present there in every living entity, no matter how insignificant. I brought this up in a discussion once before, and I got some rebuttals because there's things that need to be done in terms of maintaining cleanliness in one's house or in the temple kitchen sometimes, and they have to eliminate living entities in order to keep a certain standard. And I've seen places where Srila Prabhupada, he didn't do that. He allowed entities to live there, but there are certain codes which don't allow for insects and things to be living within the kitchens or facilities. And there was a bit of a discussion on that situation, and it's probably come up many times before, but if you have some guidance on that in that regard.
Should be really clean. Clean. Because then they don't hang around so much. That's all I would like to say about that matter at this point. Okay, 2 more. Prabhupada Priya.
Hare Krishna. In text 20 purport, this caught my attention when Prabhupada wrote, since the individual soul is present only in a particular body, he is altered when another individual soul does not cooperate with him. I thought it was an interesting choice of words. We become altered when people disagree with us. In other words, we get upset. Our mood is altered. But then he goes on to say how because the Supersoul is present in everyone's heart, in every body, the Supersoul is never altered. And also because he's the Lord. But then he says that when a person is saturated with Krishna consciousness, they can understand the presence of the Supersoul everywhere. And I'm just kind of extrapolating that when one understands the presence of the Supersoul everywhere and is on that spiritual platform, then they're no longer altered. at least to the same extent. They become like nashochichi, nakangchiti. They become a little more equipoised in potentially, whenever, even in provoking situations.
Yes, it's a very practical and helpful comment. Yes, we do have we're in an environment where it's inevitable that there will be disagreement from other living beings, especially if you're in management. And it's helpful to have a refuge, as you've just mentioned. I was thinking something similar, although it wasn't borne out in the purport, but while I was reading, I was thinking, well, you can always escalate it to the Supersoul. And then there'd be no harm in that, because Krishna's equal to all living beings, and if you feel at odds with an individual soul who's got a different point of view, if you escalate it to Krishna, you're likely to get a good solution. Okay, last one. We have one left. Who would like to take the spot? Apargarangi. Right?
Hare Krishna, please accept my respectful obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. How do we practically understand that those who are against Krishna consciousness are dear to Krishna?
Well, Krishna says, Samaham sarvabhuteshu name dvaishosti napriya. How can we understand it if somebody is a parent and they have some children, and some of them become wayward? Then, although one may take measures to help them in whatever situation they're in, and there may be other children who are obedient, the father, mother don't necessarily hate the child who's wayward. Of course, it's a limited example because some parents do hate their kids. But in any case, ideal parents will still have affection for those who are wayward, sometimes even more so. And so that's how one could understand it from a very practical point of view of human interaction. But to speak of Krishna, who says, Samaham sarvabhuteshu nami dvaishosti napriya. And one might also remember that even those who are inimical towards him, like Putana, he elevated to the highest position. And that's a remarkable aspect of Krishna, that he takes the least qualification out of a multitude of bad qualities and then elevates the good quality to the highest position and gives one credit for it. The character of very exalted people is that they tend to look for the good in other people, and then they amplify that good quality and lift that person to a higher level because of that. And that's Krishna's quality also. Not also. That is Krishna's quality, and some other people have that quality too, because it's Krishna's quality and we're part and parcel of Krishna. That brings us to the end of our morning reading. Thank you for participating. The damage is done. We can't be taken back. And we pray, dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. If you so desire, please let us become kind friends to all living beings. And please let us find the good in others, try to amplify the least of their qualifications so that they can be encouraged to engage, and so might we, in Krishna conscious practices. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this awkwardly posed prayer, in whole or in part. Please say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo. Vanchakoptarishcha Kripasanabheva Chapatitanam Pavadebhyo Vaishnavebhyo. We'd like to thank the participants of the Govardhan a cappella choir for today's presentation. Yeah, she's a scholar. Okay, we'll see everybody at 4 o'clock for the next session. And you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.